Chapter 101 Unexpected Clues House Block. Divination Club. Klein pressed the half-height silk hat on his head and walked down the stairs to the door step by step. He is no longer the usual formal dress, but a white shirt with a light vest and a knee-length thin black trench coat, which adds a bit of lean temperament to the whole person. This suit, which is easy to fight, only cost him £1, including the manual subsidy for sewing small pockets on the inside. Compared with the tuxedo suit, it is so cheap that people want to cry to touch the revolver in the underarm gun bag and the metal vials in the inner pocket. Klein took out the portrait and walked into the Divination Club. Not surprisingly, he saw Angelica, a beautiful lady in charge of reception. "Good afternoon, Mr. Meridi. I thought you would come every few days." Angelica was intrigued, and then she drew a bright smile. Klein took off his hat and sighed a track. "Good afternoon, Miss Angelica. I had a dream at noon. I dreamed of Mr. Heiners Vincent. I dreamed of something related to him. You know, as a fortune teller, you must never ignore every dream. That may be the revelation of the gods." Confused by the words full of Diablo 3 temperament, Angelica nodded thoughtfully and asked curiously, "What did you dream?" "I dreamed that Heiners Vincent was arguing with this man." Klein handed the folded paper in his hand. While Angelica was burying his head in the portrait, he pinched his eyebrows and stared at each other's emotional colors. This man? Angelica looked at the portrait as if it were a photo, lost in thought. In Klein's eyes, her emotional atmosphere is thinking blue, which is a normal reaction. "This man?" Angelica whispered again and slowly looked up. "I have seen him." Klein's spirit of flap immediately asks, "When?" "I can't remember the exact date. It should have been a month. At that time, I saw him walk Mr. Vincent to the door and talk in a low voice. I was very impressed by his thick and messy eyebrows and Mr. Vincent's rare smile." Angelica recalled and described, "Yes, he has a pair of gray-blue eyes, and his hair is just like most men of his age, and there is not much left." "Have you seen him since or before?" Klein asked gently, and Angelica shook her head. "No, definitely not. I don't even know his name. To be honest, if it weren't for you, I would suspect that the person who took out this portrait was the policeman who investigated the death of Mr. Vincent." "Oh, I wouldn't be surprised what inspiration you got. You are a real soothsayer." "I'm sorry, I'm just a policeman." Klein spoke silently and sighed. "A true soothsayer will understand his own smallness and great destiny. We can only see a vague corner, and we can only get inspiration instead of an answer. We must always reflect, remain in awe, and interpret carefully, and we cannot regard ourselves as a wise man who has mastered our destiny." After summing up his experience during this period, Klein suddenly found that his second sight was a little clearer, and he could even vaguely distinguish some details of Angelica's aura colored at this moment. He is like a nearsighted person wearing glasses with the right degree to this. "My soothsayer, potions began to show obvious signs of digestion?" Klein froze there and couldn't believe it at the moment. "I didn't expect a soothsayer like you to always be afraid of fate. It's really admirable." Angelica said sincerely. She met too many people in the club who just learned several divination methods and declared that they wanted to peep at the truth and change their destiny. Klein looked back, say with smile. "The more you know, the more you can understand your own smallness." At the same time, after reviewing his own state and past experience, he roughly grasped that the essence of acting method is to act in line with the name of potions, to understand the hidden laws, and to be strict with himself. Only in this way can we adjust the state of body, mind, and spirit, get close to the residual spirit in the potion, and gradually digest it. Others' recognition of the status of diviner is only a superficial factor. The reason why it can make itself feel spiritually light is because this feedback strengthens its recognition of certain divination behaviors, and these behaviors together constitute a diviner's code that can digest potions, help others to interpret the revelation, and guide them to move forward in a good direction. But at the same time, they must always be in awe of fate, not inflated, not arrogant, and not blindly interpret the letter itself. This is the law I have summed up at present, and it is also the essence of the next play. If it really continues to be effective, then I can completely digest the potion in less than half a year, maybe 2 or 3 months, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. The symptoms just now were very obvious. It is no wonder that the mysterious Mr. Zarathustra said that when the potion was thoroughly digested, the extraordinary person himself could clearly understand that it was yes or no without other people's teaching. Just like now, although my second sight has improved a little, I am very clear that this is only the note of digestion, not the end. Thinking of this, Klein couldn't help but thank the tuxedo clown again. He educated himself with his life. Without him, I might still need to spend a few months in the Divination Club before I can sum up the code of diviners through good or bad cases again and begin to play strictly. "Mr. Meridi, sometimes I even feel that you are a philosopher." Hearing Klein's answer, Angelica sighed. "In my circle, philosophers are swearing words." Klein's mood became good. With that, he saluted. put on his hat, and left to go out. Although Angelica doesn't know the name and identity of the gentleman in the portrait, Klein is not depressed at all, and this harvest is enough for him to make his next plan. 36 Zotland Street, inside Blackthorn Security Company. Dun gray eyes looked at the hands of the portrait way. Do you want to find this person by screening? Yes. Klein has already organized the language. Captain, didn't I say before that I would go to the Divination Club to observe the members' reaction to Heiners Vincent's sudden death? I didn't find it yesterday, but today I accidentally learned that the people in the portrait had appeared together with Heiners Vincent and talked in secret. I just turned over the investigation records of the team and found that there was no record of similar people. There is nothing wrong with his description. Even if Dunsmith takes the portrait to the Divination Club now, it will be confirmed by Angelica. Dun will look away from the portrait, smiled and said, "It seems that the money was not wasted." Captain, you have a bad memory, don't you? How can you remember the money at this time? Klein kept smiling and didn't speak. Did you draw this? Dun asked casually. Well, I drew it with the help of ritual magic. Klein replied with 100% truth. Of course, telling the truth and telling the whole truth are two different things. Dun gently a moment to say. You ask Old Neil to get more copies, and I'll ask Cohen Lee and Luo Yao to trace them and ask the police department to help. If this clue is really useful, you have made contributions again. The goddess protects us. Klein nodded 4 times on his chest, and his attitude was extremely pious for him. It is enough for Dun and others to find out the name and identity of the gentleman in the portrait. He can divine his whereabouts on the fog. Out of the Blackthorn Security Company, Klein, who was on a rest day, didn't go home immediately, but took a bus to the dock area and arrived at the door of the Dragon Bar. He thought about it. Although the soothsayer lacks direct means to defeat the enemy and has no quick spells, there are many types of battles, not all of which belong to encounters. As long as there is sufficient preparation time, the soothsayer can also use ritual magic to deal with the enemy, just like he solved the magic mirror divination event at Selena's house. This means that soothsayers had better carry some herbs, essential oils, small candles, and other items with them, so as not to take out the materials when needed, but to wait for death. After all, not everyone, like Selena, puts a bunch of occult things in their homes, just in time to use them. As for those who applied, Klein practiced too often and used almost all of them. The small pockets inside his clothes were filled with the rest. He touched the paper money in his pocket, pushed open the heavy door of the Dragon Bar and stepped in. At this time, it is in the afternoon, and there are not many customers in the bar. There is no dog and mouse competition and no boxing contest, which is quite deserted and not lively enough. Klein looked at 2 tables of guests drinking and playing cards, ready to walk to the billiard room leading to the underground trading market. Just then, he saw a burly old man coming out in a shabby naval officer's coat. Are you a friend that old Neil brought last time? The brown hair is a mess, and the blue-eyed old man with a strong smell of wine looked at Klein and walked over and said. Klein vaguely guessed each other's identity. Hatsalute way. Yes, I don't know what to call you. Contact the members of the Psychological Alchemy Society to see if he could get valuable information and materials, such as the formula that could be exchanged with justice. £3. Similar tasks are £3 to £4, and your excellent painting skills can effectively help me and my assistant save time. Detective Henry answered skillfully. £10 altogether? Klein feels toothache at this price. Detective Henry smoked his pipe and said, Yes, you need to pay £2 in advance, £3 to £5 when things are progressing, and the rest will be given to me after everything is completed. Then I will confirm the progress next week. Klein didn't bargain much, so as not to be remembered by the detective who is good at observing. After signing the standard contract, he took out 2 £1 notes and handed them to the other party, leaving only £1 and 17 souls in the private money. Watched Mr. wearing gauze mask, black trench coat, high collar quickly leave, Detective Henry smoking a pipe, eyes more confused. What does he want with a house with that chimney? Should be a painter, or at least a professional who has studied sketch. In the afternoon, Viscount Glint was in a luxurious villa in Backlin. Audrey, who followed the maid, followed the etiquette, gave her hand to her master, and looked at him with a virtual kiss. Your beauty makes my salon full of brilliance. Glint first paid a normal compliment, and then said in a low voice, That lady has come. She is both an extraordinary and a writer. Chapter 107 Buddha's Thought Writer. Audrey watched Glint's reaction and asked casually. The next topic is normal, and she did not shy away from, and, the maid who followed her. Glint straightened up, haha laughs. Yes, I think you should have seen her work, Storm Villa, which has been widely praised in the last 2 months. I like this book, especially The Calm Lady Cece. Audrey smiled and answered. At the same time, she rolled her eyes at her hypocrisy in her mind. This is because her recent hobby is not novels at all, and the reading progress of Storm Villa has been stagnant at 1/3 position for nearly a month. Since she joined the Tarot Club, met a powerful fool, and became a truly extraordinary person, she has been integrating the mysterious knowledge she has learned, systematically learning psychological content, and lacking enough interest in other Things, Viscount Glint led Audrey to the living room with a sofa and said with a big smile, "Then I'm sure you'll have a good impression on Miss Voswall, because she is as calm, intelligent, and lazy as Miss Cece in Storm Villa. Also, my dear Miss Audrey, will you play the piano for us later? This is the best praise for literature and novels." Audrey looked at Glint's side face. From his expression, tone, and some body movements, she felt the emotion that the other party wanted to show off. He wants me to be his capital to show off. Audrey thought as if she knew this friend for the first time. She kept an elegant smile away. My music teacher, Mr. Vicanal, a pianist, thinks that my level has dropped significantly recently and needs more practice. All right. Glint was about to say something when he suddenly saw a lady who went to the long table to get dessert. Audrey, this is Miss Voswall, the author of Storm Hill. Audrey looked up and saw that Miss Fowles was about 34 years old, and she was about 1.65 meters tall. She was wearing a beige dress with ruffled collar, her brown hair was slightly curled, and her light blue eyes turned around because of Glint's introduction, with a somewhat playful smile. Just no more than 3 seconds of observation, Audrey noticed many small details. Miss Fowles's fingers have traces of yellowing. She likes cigarettes. The position where the pen is held has obvious thick cocoon, which conforms to the author's identity. Her arm movements show that she is good. Strength, which is not a feature that a writer should have unless she loves exercise, or is born like this, or has been engaged in another career. Her Storm Mountain Villa presents a calm, rational, and precise style, which should be related to her previous career. Her eyes and expressions are very relaxed now, and she has a feeling of looking down on me and Glenlint. Is this the psychological advantage that extraordinary people have over ordinary people? If she is accidentally discovered by Glint as an extraordinary person, she will definitely feel embarrassed and uneasy. After all, she can't guess the reaction and subsequent development of the other party, and the unknown will bring fear. This shows that she took the initiative to contact Glint and knew about our hobbies in advance, and she was sure of the next thing. Why does an extraordinary person take the initiative to contact Glint? Need financial support, or extraordinary materials hidden in the treasure house, or have something to help? This time, Glint is introducing Forsey. Madam, this is the Miss Audrey I mentioned. She is the most dazzling jewel in Backlander. Her father is Earl Hall, a member of the House of Lords who is trusted by the king and respected by the nobles. Good afternoon, Miss Fowles. Your Storm Villa is still at my bedside. Audrey made a ceremony in strict accordance with the rules of the nobility. Then, she silently added in her mind, "That's because I haven't finished reading it for a month." Buddha thought's simple reciprocate way. Good afternoon, Miss Audrey. Your beauty really impressed me. I think I have the material for my next novel. Oh, Viscount Glint also praised you for your outstanding musical talent. In public, the two sides only exchanged a few pleasantries and didn't say anything else. After watching Fowles continue to walk to the dining table, aiming at a small cake with cream, Audrey withdrew her sight and followed Glint to the living room. She recalled all the details she had just seen, trying to accurately grasp each other's thoughts, so as to win the initiative for subsequent contact. Taking a step forward, Audrey, who was as cold as a neutral audience, stepped on the hanging skirt, shook her body and almost fell down at this moment, and the maid had been prepared to hold her and saved her beautiful image. Miss, the unique design of this skirt requires you not to walk too fast. And leaned into Audrey's ear and whispered a reminder. I see. Audrey blushed and nodded to answer. I was just so absorbed in observing others that I forgot to watch my step, she complained in her heart. In the salon after that, Audrey always kept an elegant and sweet smile in the face of attentive writers, critics, and musicians. Finally, her cheek muscles began to ache, and she accepted the hint from Viscount Glint. After waiting for a few minutes, she grabbed her skirt on the pretext of going to the bathroom, stood up slowly, and left the salon. After confirming that there is no line of sight to chase herself, she went around to the study on the first floor and said to the maid, I have something to discuss with Glint. You guard at the door and don't let anyone else in. Okay. And didn't feel strange, because she knew that her young lady and Viscount Glint had the same hobbies and often exchanged mysterious things in private. Entering the study and locking the door, Audrey saw Glint sitting behind the desk, playing with a pen, while Fourth Wall stood in front of the bookshelf and leafed through the books. Let me introduce you again, Miss Fowles, a real extraordinary person. Glint put away his pen and greeted him. Really? Audrey deliberately showed her doubts. Buddha, will books back to the original position, twist ahead to say with smile. It seems that I need to prove myself. She walked slowly to the door, stretched out her right palm, and pressed it on the handle to ran. Audrey Flowers at the moment, seems to see Miss Fowles become a phantom, penetrated the door. Her heart was horrified, and she looked intently again and found that Forsey was no longer in place. A few seconds later, when the handle was turned, the locked door was opened directly. Fourth Wall came in from the outside with a smile, the maid who was not far from the door didn't notice what was happening behind her. This is really a magical ability. Glint exclaims aloud. Audrey took a deep breath away. I have no doubt. At the same time, Fowl's ability also enabled her to confirm the real thoughts of the other party, because no matter money or materials, it is difficult to beat such an extraordinary person. Glint's family is not guarded by extraordinary people. Is Fowls hoping to accomplish something with the help of my identity and resources with Glint? Audrey tried to look like an audience. Buddha, low smile, 2 channels. Let's talk frankly, there's not much time left for us. I used to be a clinic doctor, and I became an extraordinary person by chance. It has been more than 2 years now. I want you to do something for me, and my reward is to lead you into the circle of truly extraordinary people and sell you some recipes and corresponding materials for cereal potions. Hearing this promise, Glint couldn't wait to ask, what is it? I have a companion who has been put in prison and is waiting for the final trial. I hope you can save her, no matter what method. Fowls described it succinctly. Audrey frowned slightly. Miss Fowls, your abilities should be very suitable for doing such a thing. Buddha, shake head to say with smile. No, it's not like that. Where I can pass, she can't. I can only go in and see her often and chat with her. And I don't think it's a good idea to take the risk of rescue. Life is very short, but there are many things to do. Audrey watched each other's faces and limbs, consider asked. I see. What was your companion detained for? Buddha's expression suddenly a little embarrassed. My companion is actually very respected, which makes people want to obey from the heart. Her character is noble and kind. Well, when she persuaded a villain, she took a little drastic measures. After entrusting the task, Klein kept the schedule of mysticism in the morning and fighting practice in the afternoon. The law of life made him almost forget that he was a night watchman, and the curse that always encountered extraordinary events seemed to disappear. Saturday came, and it was his turn to watch the Chinese gate. You can enjoy the coffee I left here, and the black tea in the civil service office. Dunn swept the watchroom with quiet gray eyes. Has made up a reason to explain to my brother and sister in advance. Klein delighted to nod away. Well, Captain, you are really a generous gentleman. Dunn smiled and said, this will help you relax, and being too tight is not good for your health. He took his hat and cane and walked slowly to the door. When going out, he suddenly turned around and said, I forgot to remind you that no matter what sound you hear, don't open the Chinese door unless it is opened from the inside. Remember, no matter what you hear, no matter what happens. Captain, I'll be afraid if you say that. Klein's spirit tensed, and he only felt that the darkness underground was better than the light of elegant gas lamps. P.S. There are too many free chapters updated, Con. There is no midnight on Monday, but the 2 chapters are advanced to early morning and noon respectively. Chapter 108 late at night, for recommended votes. In the early hours of the morning, in the well-ventilated but quiet underground, the faint yellow gas lamp light is protected by glass, shining steadily, and without swaying on the deserted and peaceful corridor. Klein sat in the watchroom, leafing through the newspapers, magazines, and books stacked in front of him at will, and paying attention to the outside in case someone rushes to Cheney's gate. His coat and hat are hung on the coat rack at the entrance, and his walking stick is quietly leaning against the wall. In a convenient place, the rich coffee fragrance filled out, and Klein took a drag involuntarily and pinched his temples to fight against the heaviness of his head and the exhaustion of his body, although he used to sleep at 5 o'clock in the morning and get up at 12 o'clock at noon. When he was in college on Earth, he stayed up all night from time to time after 2 or 3 years of work, and he was able to go to work in high spirits the next day. However, this must be attributed to the fun of games, the good-looking novels, and the interesting film variety shows and TV dramas, and this world obviously doesn't have these necessities of staying up late. The same is true of Roselle the Great. If you want to pack it, you should pack it completely. You should put your limited life into an infinite career and lead people from other places to enter the information age in small steps. Klein muttered silently, only to comfort himself, at least newspapers, magazines, and increasingly rich novels. What he originally wanted to do was to overcome his drowsiness by focusing on his studies, but it was found in practice that this contradicted his own responsibilities, because once he entered the state, it was easy to ignore the movement outside and the situation of Cheney's gate view. Klein took the coffee cup and blew it carefully. He took a sip, let the fragrance linger in his mouth, and let the liquid flow slowly through his esophagus. Felmare coffee in the Pass Valley is very bitter, but very refreshing. Klein praised and put down his glass. The Pass Valley, located in the southern continent, is a high-quality coffee bean producing area. At present, it is in the competition between the Republic of India and the Kingdom of Rua. They established colonial regimes on the left bank and the right bank of the Pass Valley respectively, and destroyed the original Pass Kingdom. In the creepy silence, Klein picked up a magazine at random and found that it was Ladies' Aesthetics, about clothes and collocation. This must be from Luo Shan. He whispered funny and flipped through it with great interest. Perhaps influenced by the rapid development of camera technology in recent 10 years, the magazine Ladies Aesthetics not only widely uses illustrations, but also imitates newspapers and takes black and white photos as its content. They invited famous drama and opera singers to show the charm and magic of costumes. In just 7 years, they have developed from a regional new magazine in Backlander to a mainstream magazine with channels all over the country. This dress is good and it looks good. Klein browsed leisurely and did not hide his yearning for beauty. He is a man with normal physical and mental development. He always appreciates beautiful girls very much, but he has already set a goal to find a way to go home, so he tries to keep his distance from the opposite sex, and he doesn't want to delay each other or leave emotional debts. As for finding a street girl, he has a little cleanliness in this respect. Benson and Melissa are already fetters, which can't be lifted. We can only try to make up for them in the future. Klein suddenly feels heavy and can't help but sigh. The longer I leave home, the more I can feel that melancholy in the dead of night. He suddenly lost interest in appreciating beautiful ladies, put down his magazine, and picked up a novel instead. Storm Villa, written by Voss Wall. Klein read out the main contents of the cover. The quiet night, the faint yellow light, and a book with a cover reminded him of the days when he rented books as a child, so he read it with nostalgia. The novel Storm Villa tells the story of Miss Cece, who is 1.65 meters tall and weighs 98 pounds, entering Frias Villa as a tutor. 1 pound is about 1 caddy. Is this a plain version of Jane Eyre? Klein rubbed his fingers against the comfortable paper, speculating about the content of the follow-up. However, when he thought it was a romantic novel, there was an evil spirit behind it. When he believed it was a supernatural novel, Miss Cece blew herself up as a detective and gave a gorgeous reasoning. When Klein thought it was a detective novel, the man was hit hard on the head, lost his memory, and started a tearful story. In the end, it is still a romance novel. Klein closed his books and took a sip of coffee with a headache. Knock, knock.
Knock.
Knock. Fierce knocking Horan sounded, echoing in the dim and quiet corridor, echoing in the underground where almost no one else. Klein got a fright, and his spirit suddenly tightened. Instinctively, he took the revolver out of his underarm gun bag, adjusted the magazine and trigger, and slowly leaned against the door to find the source of the sound. Knock.
Knock.
Knock, bang.
Bang.
Bang. Clap more and more intense. Klein looked inside and saw the black iron door with 7 holy emblems painted on it, the sound coming from behind Cheney's store. His eyes narrowed and his heart beat like a drum. Bang.
Bang.
Bang. Klein saw the Cheney's door shaking slightly and felt the great force it was bearing. No, I just met something on duty here on the first day. Do I have more bad luck after crossing? Klein's right hand holding the gun handle broke into a cold sweat. But soon, he remembered the captain's words. No matter what sound you hear, no matter what happens, don't open the Cheney's door unless it is opened from the inside. Well, is this a normal phenomenon? Klein calmed down a lot. Bang.
Bang. Bang. Bang. Bang. Bang.
The movement behind Cheney's gate is getting louder and louder, but this heavy black iron door just shakes, and there is no other abnormality. It's a normal phenomenon. It scared me to death. Klein whispered and was about to return to the duty room. At that moment, he heard a harsh sound of friction and saw the heavy outward Cheney's door, which opened a gap. Stick. In the sour voice, Klein's almost frozen eyes saw a figure which was about the height of an adult and ordinary man's forearm, wearing a black, elegant, and miniature court dress with obvious stains on the skirt. It has a not delicate face, dark eyes, and a tight mouth. This is a puppet. A toy puppet is almost Klein. Subconsciously, an old-fashioned gun aimed at the moment. The puppet wearing a black court dress tightly, hard to stick to the open Cheney's door, opened the paper in his hand. There are many hidden symbols painted on the paper, some of which Klein knows, and some of which he hasn't mastered yet. Together, they form a vertical eye. Klein hasn't had time to think about what this is, when the court muppet was suddenly pulled back to the Cheney's gate, and was forcibly pulled back to the Cheney's gate by the invisible thing. Bang! Cheney's door closed again, and there was no sound of knocking or slapping. The usual peace and silence returned to the underground, as if nothing had happened. Cheney's door was open from the inside, and I have to report to the captain, but it was closed again. At this time, Klein found his thoughts, surprised, afraid, and confused. A few seconds later, he remembered what the Muppet in the black court dress was just now, because he was a full member of the Night Watchman, and he was already qualified to know the 3 items sealed behind the Cheney's gate in Tingen City. No. 0625. Name. Doom Muppet. Danger level. 3, which is dangerous and needs to be used with care. Only actions with more than 3 people can apply. Confidentiality level. Full members of the Night Watchman and above. Seal method. Only need to be isolated from humans. Description. This puppet is wearing a long palace dress that was popular around 1300. There are dirty marks on the skirt that are difficult to wash away. It is impossible to confirm whether it existed in the first place. In several tragedies caused by family financial crisis in Tianjin, the police noticed the existence of this puppet, which was always placed in the children's bedroom and on the cabinet next to the bed. Several night watchmen were entrusted to investigate the puppet. It was initially confirmed that it would bring bad luck, make people around them gradually unlucky, fall into crisis, and eventually die one by one. It took only 2 weeks for the subjects to be on the verge of bankruptcy. This puppet does not have the characteristics of being alive, and there is no tendency to try to escape the seal. After a long-term experiment, we found that as long as we enter it within 10 meters every day for no more than half an hour, we will not be infected with bad luck. If you are already unlucky, just transfer it to another owner, and the situation will improve. Appendix. This puppet first appeared at the home of the old lady Tess in the lower street of Tycross Street in the west. She was a craftsman who made toys. Because of her old age, her husband was seriously ill and her 2 children died early. She had to move to Tycross Street. This is the last toy she sold. She traded this puppet for some poisonous violet juice, which ended her and her husband's starvation for more than 3 days. Klein recalled the data of the seal 3-0625, and his heart was filled with more doubts and horror. Not to say that this puppet does not have the characteristics of living? Didn't it say that it didn't try to escape the seal? Then what did I just see? What was the last thing that pulled it back? What exactly does the pattern drawn on the unfolded paper represent? Just that scene, it's like there is a psychopath killer in dealing with a victim. The victim tried to clap the door, trying to call for help, but it was pulled back. With many ideas, Klein decided not to make his own decisions. He returned to the guardroom and pulled a rope pulling, gear running, located in the 2nd floor of the Blackthorn Security Company. Horan rang with a rapid bell. Leonard Mitchell, who plays cards in the entertainment room, and other sleepless people immediately put down their cards and rushed underground. P.S. Ask for recommended votes on Monday. Chapter 109 Reasoning. Seeking recommended votes. The footsteps running fast were introduced to Klein's ears from far and near, which made him settle down a lot at the door of the duty room. What happened? Leonard, the first to arrive, asked in a heavy voice with a revolver in his hand. Seeing that he couldn't stop the car, Klein suddenly thought of something that Luo Shan had mentioned. 3 years ago, Leonard, who had just become a sleepless, tried to run the stairs at a sprint speed without adapting to the potions, and the result turned into a wheeled, gently cough a cry. Klein pointed to Cheney's doorway. There was a violent knock coming from inside, and then it turned into a slap. Later, the door was pushed open a little. The Cheney's gate was pushed open? The short Cohen Lee asked in amazement. Yes, it was pushed open by a gap. Klein was about to continue to describe, but saw Leonard, Cohen Lee, and Luo Yao not close to the duty room, stopped a few steps away and scattered into an arc, as if to guard against themselves. He paused to say, "Are you doubting me?" "No, it's not suspicion, it's a normal process." Cohen Lee shook his head and denied it. In such a tense atmosphere, Leonard is still not serious enough to add with a smile. In other parishes, there have been such cases. The extraordinary person who was on duty at Cheney's gate lost control, rang the bell, and then the teammates who came to help did not pay attention and even killed 2 people. All right. Klein no longer has the grievance and anger of being targeted, but asks, then how can I prove that I am not out of control? Leonard Convergence, up laughing expression, ordered 4 times in the chest, a deep voice to recite. They are naked, have no clothes or food, and have no cover in the cold. They got wet by the heavy rain and clung to the rock because there was no shelter. They are mothers whose children have been taken away, orphans who have lost hope, and poor people who have been forced to leave the right path. The night didn't give up on them and gave them care. Sacred and pitying prayers echoed in the ground, which made everyone's body, mind, and spirit get a free silence. See Klein, no abnormal reaction. Leonard stopped reciting, outline a smile way. No problem. You are still our trustworthy companion. Has remained silent. Cold Lady Luo Yao looked at Cheney's door, take the initiative to ask. What did you see after the door was pushed open a little? I saw the Doom Muppet, the one in the black classical court dress, 3-0625. Klein still replied with some fear. But in less than 3 seconds, it was pulled back by invisible forces, and the Cheney's gate was closed again. What was the situation? Leonard and Cohen Lee and Luo Yao looked at each other respectively. Haha, like you, we don't know the reason for all this. Since Cheney's gate has been closed again, and there is no abnormality, then we shouldn't enter at this time. We must wait for dawn, and wait for the captain. At this time, Luo Yao coldly added, I will stay here, and be on duty with you. All right. Leonard spread his hand, and laughed jokingly. As the strongest person here, I'll stay, too. You go back to the 2nd floor in case the police department has an emergency, and can't open the door. Cohen Lee didn't say much, immediately nodded and turned away. At this moment, Leonard took a look at Klein and Loyo respectively. Maybe we can continue to play cards? In this case, we need some entertainment to make us not too nervous. No problem. Klein adjusted the revolver and put it back in the underarm gun bag. Luo Yao didn't say yes or no. Wearing soft and smooth black hair, followed him into the duty room to fight the landlord. No, fight evil, Klein looks like casually said. Bad luck puppet, I mean 3-0625. According to the description of the data, it should not have the characteristics of living. Haha, 3 A's. Leonard pressed his hand and said in a small talk, in the previous 40 years, 3-0625 didn't show the characteristics of being alive. We can assume that the description of the data is correct first, and use this as a premise to reason and deduce. 2. Do you have an idea? Luo Yao asked succinctly. Klein hesitated to leave 3-2. Leonard took a sip of freshly brewed coffee. Yes, since 3-0625 itself does not have the characteristics of being alive, its performance today must be influenced by other factors, and it is a recent factor. Otherwise, it should have let us see this side of it long ago. And in the last month, what's different behind Cheney's gate? Luo Yao looked at Klein left 3-2, thoughtfully for a few seconds. Only one thing is different from the past, that is, the notes and seal, 2-049, of the Antigone family once stayed behind the Cheney's gate for one night. Leonard looked at the cards in his hand and tapped the table and laughed. If the Doom Muppets could be abnormal, 2-049 would have created a similar incident behind the Cheney's gate in Backlander, so I suspect that the problem comes from the notebook of the Antigone family. Klein think carefully, can't help nodding. This is probably the biggest. Leonard, I didn't expect you to be a person who is good at reasoning. Generally speaking, romantic poets and being good at reasoning are incompatible. That's just because he loves reading detective stories recently. Luo Yao beside flatly stated. 2 kings, 8 to K straight. No one wants it? 3 sixes gone. Seeing this, Klein and Leonard Chi fell silent. They forgot a crucial thing when they didn't concentrate on playing cards. This middle Luo Yao is evil. Looking at Luo Yao cut the card, Klein once again seized the opportunity to ask, what force pulled 3-0625 back? Leonard glanced at him, haha laughs. You don't think that the only protective measures behind the Cheney's gate are the sealed room buried deep underground and several elderly guards? In fact, when the sun went down completely, the keeper had left the Cheney's gate and returned to St. Selena's church. The power inside reaches its peak at night and is no longer suitable for living things. It will not weaken until the sun rises. This is why the captain told us not to enter the Cheney's gate no matter what sound we heard. In other words, the captain forgot to tell me this reason. Klein wondered and asked, protective measures similar to those of the Falun Gong? Like an enlarged version of spells and amulets? Luo Yao nodded while touching the cards. The reason why the Cheney's gate is placed under the central church in every city is to be maintained by the believers who come every day. Their sincere prayers will make some spirituality enter the circle, and many a mickle makes a mickle. Well, Klein suddenly nodded and saw a rotten card. At this moment, Leonard smiled and said, the protective measures behind the Cheney's gate are not limited to this one. The ashes of St. Selena are buried inside. She was a high-ranking strong person before her death. The ashes of St. Selena? The ashes of the high-sequence strong man? Holy ashes? What can this do? Klein is confused and curious. St. Selena was a saint during the establishment of the Church of the Goddess of Night. She was active in the ancient tertiary and was recorded in various holy books. Therefore, Selena is a common name among people who believe in the Goddess of Night. Leonard seemed to hear Klein's voice and said, there are rumors that the remains or ashes left after the death of the high-sequence strong still have incredible power. Of course, this is just a rumor. Klein nodded slightly and turned his attention back to the poker in his hand. In the next few hours, nothing unusual happened behind Cheney's store, but Klein lost 2 solars, and he was very distressed. Leonard, who was also full of romantic poet temperament in playing cards, lost 4 solars and 5 pence, and only quietly Luo Yao was the winner. The sun has just risen, and it's my turn next. The quiet writer, Miss Siga Tian, entered the duty room at 6 o'clock. Klein wrote last night's experience in the notebook and returned to Blackthorn Security Company with Leonard and Loyode. At this moment, he looks extremely tired, while the midnight poet and Sleepless next to him are still in high spirits. This is the difference between different sequences. Klein was about to go home to sleep through the partition when he suddenly saw the captain open the door and come in. Good morning, Captain. He couldn't help yawning when he greeted him, Dunn, wearing a black trench coat, took off his hat and swept his one eye with gray eyes. Good morning, you should go back to rest. Did anything happen last night? Klein immediately told Leonard's reasoning about the impending Doom Muppets briefly. Dunn made no comment and calmly walked to his office. I'll send a telegram to ask the temple. Klein didn't stop, slowly walked out of 36, Zotland Street and breathed the cool air in the morning. His spirit did it one brace up, and he suddenly remembered something he had always forgotten before. I forgot to tell the captain and Leonard that the Doom Muppet had paper in his hand. How could I forget? There seems to be a subtle force affecting me, preventing me from telling other night watchmen about it. It was many days ago that the notes of the Antigonus family were stored behind the Chinese gate in Tingen City. The bad luck puppet 3-0625 should have been affected long ago. Why didn't it appear abnormal until last night? Because last night was my first rotation at Chinese gate? It tried its best to show me the pattern on the paper? Is this what the Antigonus family notes want to achieve? Because I survived contact with it and became a soothsayer? Doubts flashed through Klein's mind, making him froze in place. I don't know if I should pretend not to think of anything, continue to go home and sleep, or report to the captain upstairs. P.S. The update is completed today, and the recommended votes are requested. Chapter 110 Confirmation. After thinking for a moment, Klein decided to go home first and confirm one thing. Moreover, he believes that if the action of the Doom Muppet last night is not specially designed to let himself see the pattern on the paper, the captain will certainly find clues when they follow up the inspection, and whether he reports or not will not affect the overall situation. On the contrary, it is worth considering. This is what Klein wants to confirm next. He returned to Daffodil Street by trolley bus. When he got home, his brother Benson and his sister Melissa, who were in Sunday state, had not got up yet, and the living room was quiet and dark. Klein boiled a pot of water, lost some tea leaves, ate an oatmeal bread with it, and then walked to the stairs with his coat, hat, and cane. Unconsciously, he relaxed his steps and didn't make obvious noise. Just boarded the second floor. He saw the bathroom door suddenly opened, and Melissa, wearing an old cloth dress, came out with a sleepy look. "You're back." Melissa rubbed her eyes with some confusion. Klein covered his mouth and yawned. "Yes, I need a beautiful dream. Don't wake me up before lunch." Melissa, suddenly reminded of what seems to say. "Benson and I are going to St. Selena's church to pray and attend mass in the morning, and lunch, maybe a little late." As a not-so-pious believer of the goddess of the night, she and Benson kept the frequency of going to church once every 2 weeks, while as a night watchman, Klein had never been to church except that time when he was followed by members of the priory. "No, I'm in the church every day, it's just the underground of the church." Klein subconsciously defended himself. At present, he is very worried that the goddess will abandon himself as a false believer. If the ritual magic fails to get a response at a critical moment, it will be a big joke. But think about old Neil. The goddess is quite tolerant of the night watchman. Well, that's right. Klein puffed himself up. These divergent thoughts flashed, and he looked at Melissa and nodded with a smile. "No problem, I can just sleep longer." Passing Melissa, he entered his bedroom and locked the door with his backhand. Then, he fought hard, took out the silver dagger for the ceremony, and created a sealed spiritual wall. Then, Klein took 4 steps backwards, recited the mantra, resisted the frantic screams, and entered the fog. In this illusory and boundless world, he is the only living creature. Sitting on the head of an ancient mottled bronze long table, calm for dozens of seconds, Klein with parchment, writing divination mantra. The design shown by the Doom Muppet. At that moment last night, Klein saw the mysterious pattern on the paper clearly, but because of nervousness and haste, he only remembered it roughly and couldn't recall the specific details. But this is not a problem. For diviners, as long as they have seen it and remembered it, they can reproduce it. According to the occult theory, spirituality will remember everything it sees, and as long as the method is appropriate, it can make the scene at a specific moment reappear. At this point, Klein even thinks that there is some truth in the theory of psychological alchemy described by Psychic Daily. Human memory is just an island exposed on the sea and cannot carry too much, so most of the information remembered by spirituality becomes subconscious and becomes the subject of the island underwater. Spirituality itself, if not the whole ocean, includes all the waters around the island. After reciting the divination mantra, Klein leaned back and went to sleep by meditation. In the hazy, twisted, and fragmented world, he saw the Chinese door opened by Zaza again and heard the heavy friction. The